But the last thing I want to show you here is that's the current administration with Jake Sullivan. The incoming administration with General Kellogg as being the special envoy for the Ukraine war. He was on Fox News yesterday talking about, well, in all this lot and all the things that have been happening with the long-range weapons been using, with the assassination of the Russian general, Trump is going to come in, though, and he thinks that because of certain things, which he'll talk about in a second, that Trump is going to be in a good position to have a negotiated settlement. If all these other people I've talked about are disconnected from reality, unfortunately, General Kellogg doesn't seem to understand how the battlefield is really playing out.
We're told that Russia is losing up to 1,200 troops per day. Ukraine has lost around 40% of the land they seized in Russia's Kursk region. General, sounds like both sides are close to exhaustion. Isn't that a pretty good time to talk peace?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think both sides are ready. Think of a cage fight. You've got two fighters and both want to tap out. You need a referee to kind of separate them. And I think President Donald J. Trump can do that. I think he's got a vision to do that. I think he's got the energy to do that. And I think he's actually got both sides are willing to get together eventually and talk. I think it's a perfect position for President Trump to be in, and I think he'll execute well.
See, I think that Kellogg is setting Trump up for disaster, because you just saw Putin very confidently saying, we are winning, we will win this. And then he graphically showed why. Because his troops are advancing, not by tens and hundreds of meters, but by kilometers. They're moving forward. And he looked at the Kursk region and said that they're both exhausted. I mean, Russia has retaken at a minimum 50% of that so far, and the speed, it seems like the Russians have accelerated their operations there, because, and it could be that they want to have that back in their hands completely by the January 20th. Putin was actually asked by a resident of that area, when is he going to win it? He refused to put a day on it, only to say absolutely it is certain. There should be no confusion in anyone's mind that Putin will ever have a negotiated will. He'll say, okay, well, if you'll give me back Kursk, then I'll give you back something, because he's not going to. He doesn't have to. He has the military capacity and is demonstrating it, and over time, he will take all that. So he doesn't have to give any of that in negotiations. They're not exhausted. And I just don't understand why General Kellogg would say that. When you see, you don't have to listen to Putin. You don't have to watch anything Putin said. Just look at the Institute for the Study of War maps. You see that they're moving closer and closer to the crucial city of Pokrovsk, after taking lots of territory around, after taking Vuhledar, after taking Avdiivka, after taking a number, they're closing in on Kharkova, etc., all kinds of areas. The Russians are advancing everywhere. And if they take Pokrovsk, then you genuinely have the potential for breaking the Eastern Front in half and allowing the Russians to move in. I've shown you many times on the map that the defensive fortifications on the other side of Pokrovsk are very, very weak as compared to everything that they have faced up to this point. So the danger for Ukraine will grow significantly larger if Russia succeeds in taking Pokrovsk there. They're not exhausted. They're continuing forward. See, Russia, because they have so many men, they can rotate troops out. Ukraine, by all accounts, in many of these key warfighting formations, work to exhaustion. They never get replaced as an organization. They just replace the deaths with new untrained people and then throw them in there until they're dead, etc. And they just keep doing that. But the formation always stays in contact, whereas Russia can move the entire formation out to rest, refit, recuperate, replace losses, etc., rest some more, train up, and then move them back in. That's what the United States did during World War II. We had enough men to where one unit, like 101st Airborne, they would fight for a long time, and then they would be taken off the line, etc., and then refit and recover, and then they would go back in. Someone else would take their place, vice versa. Russia can do that, i.e. they're not worn out. They're not looking to tap out. They're looking to win. You've got to understand, for Russia, it's an existential fight. And the NATO allowing these long-range weapons to be used on their border confirms it for them. They say, this is what we were worried about all along, is that you would put NATO force on our border, and then the time of flight for missiles is coming in faster and faster, and they're giving them less reaction time. So this just solidifies in their mind why they will fight until the end. And if you know anything about Russian history and Russian culture, I'm talking back over centuries here, not even just to World War II, they're not going to give up. That's why the number that's been tossed around, the 600,000 Russian casualties, that's almost certainly a huge exaggeration. But the actual number isn't small. It's by all accounts between 80 and 100,000 dead, and 250 to 350,000 wounded. It's a huge number. It's legit, and no family in Russia likes it. But because the nation recognizes it's an existential threat, because this nation has suffered before, they know what it means to suffer. It's part of their culture, it's part of their cultural DNA. No one should have any fantasies that suddenly, because things get hard, and also they certainly don't like the inflation issue. Their economy is having some genuine problems, and they're going to have a lot of trouble with that. But Russians are used to suffering, folks. They're not like us. We don't like any suffering. If anything doesn't work for us, we get really upset and start demanding people's be fired or whatever. The Russians, it takes a whole lot longer for them. Obviously, the 1917 revolution has shown that it can get that way. But remember, in the 1917 revolution, that only happened after they had lost 5 million troops killed. Not just because a handful, not because of 100,000, but 5 million. The Russian people are just different than we are. Just look from their history. Don't expect anything different. So the problem with us right now is that if Trump is listening to Kellogg and believes that he's going to go into a negotiation in a superior position because they're ready to tap out, what do you think is going to happen when he talks to the Putin I just showed you, who's very confident because he knows he has the battlefield math on his side? Then Trump is going to be put in a really uncomfortable, if not problematic position of realizing that when he looks at his hand, he's got a bunch of, small cards, 2s, 3s, 5s, 7s, 8s, etc. And Putin is stacked full of face cards. You know what I'm saying? It's not an even negotiating position right now. No matter how good Trump is or how much he wants to end it, if he thinks he's going to go in there with a strong hand and he picks up his cards, he's going to be a little bit surprised when he finds out what the other side is.